So today we're going to have a look at prototypal inheritance, and we'll also touch on classes as well a little bit. So an extra sort of syntax for JavaScript objects and inheritance. But firstly, let's just use the console to look at some existing pre-built JavaScript objects or data types. So what are some of the complex data types that we have in JavaScript? So not a primitive, but
objects.
Some sort of object or an array or a set, these sorts of things. So we can directly inspect those built-in objects using the console. The way I like to do it is using console.dir or dir, sort of for the directory tree of these built-in objects, because the global object in JavaScript is called what? In the browser, sorry, the global object in window, yeah. So you do have window, and you could, I think, do console.dir on that. We're going to get a lot of nonsense that we don't need, but let's see what we get. Maybe it's window with a little w. Okay, so there's the window object, and inside of that are essentially all the browser APIs. So you're probably seeing some that we've used already: fetch, the history API, IndexedDB API, local storage. All of these are listed, yeah. Navigator, lots of the events, yeah. So all of that is included under the window object. So the global JavaScript object in the browser. However, we want to just narrow down our search a little bit because we could spend probably years exploring all of that stuff. And let's just look at one complex thing built, one of the built-in objects in JavaScript. And I spoke about array, so we can just do console.array as well. It lists all the other built-in types of array that we now have in the browser and in JavaScript. If I do that, it essentially says that array is a function, but that function has lots of things attached to it. This is how we can call the property array.length. So length is a property of any array instance. We also have some static methods, so methods that belong only to an array and not to any instance of an array. So just to clarify, so my array is an instance of an array. It uses this syntax of square brackets, the array literal syntax, to create an instance of an array. However, once we've done that, we can do things like my array dot, and look, they've all popped up already. My array.concat, my array.fill, my array.find. Somehow that instance of the array has access to all of these methods. How? That's the question that we will try and answer today. So I could definitely do array.length. So array.length is a property that belongs to all instances. But can I do array.from? Or sorry, can I do myArray.from or myArray.isArray? Let's see. No, there's no such thing. It belongs only to this parent array class. It doesn't belong to every instance of an array. An instance of an array only has access to the things inside of the prototype of its parent class. If I look inside the prototype, probably can't do it. Oh, I can do it now, even though it was an old one. If I look inside the prototype of the parent array class, we can see that there inside are these methods that we have access to. Concat again, fill again, filter, find. Yeah, that's where they all live, inside of the built-in array objects prototype. So essentially what happens when we create a new instance of the array, this syntax references this array object that's attached to directly the window, or I'm not quite sure. Is it window.array or is it window. Yes, window.array. So when we create a new instance of an array, it is referencing this built-in array object that comes as part of the core JavaScript language. It looks inside the prototype, creates a new instance of an array with access to all of these methods, but not to this one, not to isArray, not to from, not to of. It's symbol, not too sure about that one. I've never looked into that, to be honest, since it was introduced in 2015. But yeah. So we can check these things directly by doing. We can have a look at the array prototype. So we could type. Let me clear this console actually first. Oh, I can't do it like that, can I here? I'll do it like that. So, again, I can do my console.dir array. And this time I want to look at the prototype of the array. So the prototype is what array can pass on to its children. Yeah, it can pass these methods onto an instance of an array. How about what array itself inherits from its parent class? Where is that stored? Does array have a parent class in JavaScript? It does. It has the same parent class that a lot of built-in JavaScript objects have. And go on, did someone say something? No, someone did not have a guess. But the methods from that parent class are stored in _proto_. And some people get those two confused, right? Some people get those two confused, the prototype and the proto. But the proto has methods that have come from array's parent, which in this case is the built-in object. And a built-in object is a built-in function. Built-in object, I think.
So initially JavaScript didn't have any object stuff in it, did it? Is it just sort of been bolted on? It's not really an object-oriented language, is it?
It follows many paradigms. It's not sort of restricted to any one paradigm. As for in the very first version of JavaScript, did we have this sort of prototyping inheritance? I must admit I'm a bit ignorant to. Yeah, I didn't use it back then, and I haven't historically gone back that far. It's a really good question. I'd like to know myself. Yeah.
I mean, it's not very well named from my point of view.
What?
The prototype, proto.
Yeah.
It's not the most graceful.
No, there's a lot
sort of name.
Not so very graceful things in there, right? But
prototype means it's just like a test. You know, it's not like a permanent solution.
Yeah, true.
So it confused me a bit. It being called prototype, it's like, oh, so is that actually a proper part of the language, or you know, it doesn't really make any sense to me.
Yeah.
JavaScript was written in about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
less than
been,
that, right? 10
There's been
days.
lots of time to change it since then. Right?
But I think you've got to think of it as a blueprint, like a prototype blueprint sort of thing, yeah? So when you're testing out a blueprint of something, you want it to have the basic features of the prototype, and then you build on from there. That's how I think.
Because they say with Ruby,
makes
you have
like
the cake mold, and the cake mold is the class, and then the cakes are the instances sort of thing.
Yeah. So there's lots of similar patterns, I guess, in other languages, but they tend to be slightly different type of inheritance, or class-based inheritance, right? Whereas JavaScript is technically prototype-based inheritance rather than being class-based.
Yeah, I mean, in Ruby, even an integer is an object.
Yeah. Whereas we can't do.
Is an object. Essentially, you have methods on that object. Whereas in JavaScript, they're actually proper types, I guess. Right?
Yeah, we can't do, for example, 9 dot prototype or anything like that, right? It's not going to have any sort of prototype object on it. We can check what parent class things belong to in JavaScript. So I had that before, didn't I? As an array. And we can check what the parent class is using instance of. But we actually have to know what we want to test it to be an instance of. So I could test it whether it is an instance of a string. Oh, no, false. That makes sense. Is it an instance of an object? That's an interesting one. Oh, it is an instance of an object. But is it also an instance of an array? Yep. So it's an instance of an array, but because our array is an instance of, will this work? Yeah, of an object, then technically our array instance is still an instance of an object, because it inherits not directly from the object, but indirectly through the array object. This will be clearer when we go onto the board, and we can draw some flow diagrams and stuff, right, to see how our different object types are inheriting from each other. What else do I want to say on here? Anything much? Do you have any questions? So how about classes? Yeah, go on. No, go on. You go first.
How can we practically use this for coding?
Yeah. So there aren't too many practical applications for me. I mean, instance of, I guess, is good to check whether you can use certain methods on an object before you try. Yeah. So if you had some data, I mean, it's going to be a variable name, right? So if you just had data and you didn't actually know what form that data is coming in, you could have some sort of, if data is an instance of array, then great, I can do data.filter, alright, and that will work, because if it's an instance of an array, it's got access to the filter method. However, if it wasn't an instance of an array, then we don't want to try calling filter, because we're going to get an error. Yeah, it's going to say, well, filter is not, or data.filter is not a function, or something like that. Yeah, I forget exactly what it says, but and that would of course just break your code. So sometimes if you're unsure of what data types you've got, then it might just be worth having conditionals based on what methods you have access to. So that would definitely be one practical application, I think. And if you've got lots of classes defined, so I don't even know what. Should we go person? I can't know. We're creating a class, aren't we? So if we did class person, How can we set this up? I suppose if we go for original constructor function, or we might even just want to make it a new object to begin with. I don't know, right? So at the moment, our person is going to be no different to an object, just doing that. That's the best way to do it. I hardly ever use classes. I'll do this into class, sorry. So that would be let person equals new object if we're doing it that way. I changed my mind halfway through. So now if we do person, well, yeah, let's do persons dot proto, and we should see that it has access to the methods that objects have. It has own property, is prototype of, these sorts of things, yeah? Any object prototype has access to those. I don't know where I was going with that, guys. I think we should go to the board first and I'll come back and I'll think of that example.
What about the string?
A string? So strings are a bit weird, aren't they? So we can say, is that an instance of string? And it will give false. However, is there a,
Why is it false?
why is it false? Because, let me do one more thing first and then I'll explain that. But if we do console.dir, and we look for the string object, well, that does exist definitely in JavaScript. And it does have lots of methods attached to it. And if we used one of these methods on our string that says it's not an instance of a string, then it will still work. So yeah, this is definitely a confusing one.
So that's the confusing.
Right, sorry, let's get rid of that. So yeah, we can still do things like that. So we still have access to the string methods. However, where are they coming from? Because apparently hello is not an instance of the string prototype that has all these methods defined within it. And that's because hello, as it is just stored as a primitive. It's just stored as a value. It's not wrapped, or it's not an instance of any parent class. However, as soon as we try and do it doesn't really matter what one I do, does it? So, as soon as I try and do some sort of string method on it, under the hood goes, oh, hang on, we're trying to access a string method on this string primitive. I need to wrap it, essentially, inside of a string wrapper. So now this has become like one of these. So that all happens under the hood. It's created a new string object without telling you so, just so that you can use the string methods. Because if I did this, it still looks the same, right, as an output. Let string objects equals that, and then string object outputs this string value. However, that's not what happens when you just do that. Those two are not equivalent. One is just a value, one is a value wrapped inside of a string object.
So what was the instance of?
So if you do instance of string object, you're gonna get string object instance of string. Oh, really? Now that is interesting. That's just...
So was it an object?
Huh?
Yeah,
Is it
so
does it just class it as an object?
An array? Maybe it's an array.
I don't think it's gonna get true for anything. I mean, if it was anything, it should be a string, right? Because I've actually invoked the string constructor there to inherit from the string object. So, no, I did truly expect that to be true. But obviously not. So, it must be re-optimizing it under the hood as well to to store it as a primitive, even when you do that. It's very confusing. Yeah.
Because my first thought was like, oh, maybe we should then wrap around the string thing, like every string with this string stuff, so we are sure all this is the actual string.
Yeah. That make any difference if I do it like that? No. Oh, hold on. Don't know where the other one's gone. So string object to instance of. Okay. Alright. So obviously that and that don't do the same thing. I thought that was shorthand for that, but obviously it's not. So if we do definitely use the new keyword to inherit, then it's happy. So that just must be turning data into a string. That's invoking the string constructor. So my mistake. Yeah. Have fun on these ones for interview questions, right? Which they do sometimes to test your knowledge. You don't have to anymore. No. Good luck to you. Yeah. And after that, you say, I've got 3 years' experience. They don't even bother testing you, do they? So they still do, unfortunately. But.
This question will be up. What instance of string it is?
Yeah. So it's worth seeing what some other methods as well do, like we can do object.create, and then we could pass in the object that we want to inherit from. So do a few of these examples on the board. So see, its prototype is coming from the string, so it means it's inheriting from the string built-in object there. So it means, again, new string, we could call various string methods on it and object methods. Thought we could, so let's do chart at again. Oh no, at the moment it's, again this is confusing. I'm going to avoid the string examples. Let's go and do some work on the board, I think.
It was getting fun.
It's getting horrible for live coding.